Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for April 12th, 2024 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. It was a very rainy and windy morning, but Kim and I decided to brave the east spit. I left my camera in the car so it wouldn't get wet, so I don't have any bird photos, but we did have 5 swallow species this morning: tree, roughwing, barn, purple martin, and bank swallow. We had a total of 39 species from the east spit. Eventually, we headed over to Braddock Bay Park where the rain continued, so I sat in the car for a while and ate all my food and read a book for a little bit, but by around 11:30 it was starting to clear up as that rain ended, so we wandered over to the platform. Actually, we stood beside the platform to shelter from the wind. This was post-cold front conditions, so actually the temperature was falling throughout the day, but there was a southwest wind, a very strong southwest wind, and I was a little uncertain of how the day would develop, but we actually had a really good raptor flight pickup, and the sun did pop out for a little bit in the midday period, and we ended up with a really good flight with really close looks at a good variety of raptors, and then it slowed down again towards the end of the day as it clouded over again. Here's a photo of 4 mallards, and it looks like they're flying to the left, right? Well, actually, they were getting blown backwards. That's how strong the wind was, so it was pretty funny, and I took a picture. Here we have a small raptor with pointed wings. This is a small falcon that is light underneath, making it an American kestrel. Here we have a small raptor with a long tail and long rounded wings, so we should be thinking accipiter. We see a small head on this bird and a squared off tail tip because all of the tail feathers are the same length, so this is a sharp-shinned hawk, a species that you'll become very familiar with in the course of this video, and we see that it has orange barring underneath, indicating that it is an adult. Here we have another adult sharp-shinned hawk, tucked in and cruising by like a missile at Mach 5. Again, notice that really squared-off tip to the tail. And sharp-shinned hawks are small. Some of them are approximately the size of a blue jay, so they don't handle the strong winds as well, so it's pretty comical to see them getting blown around. Here we have a hawk in a soar, and it's that classic buteo shape. We see dark patagial bars and a belly band, so this is a red-tailed hawk. We do not see a dark trailing edge to the wings or a red tail, so this is a juvenile red-tailed hawk. Here's a hawk where we see some brown barring on the underside of the body. We see a very straight trailing edge to the wings that is also a dark trailing edge, and the tail looks black with a single wide white band. This is a small buteo. This is a broad-winged hawk adult. Here we have a hawk shaped like a flying cross with a long tail and long rounded wings, so we should be thinking accipiter. Looking at this bird, we see a large head, and we see that the outer tail feathers are slightly shorter than the central ones, giving a little bit of a rounded tip. Sometimes when they completely fold their tail closed like this, it doesn't look as rounded, but you can see this outer tail feather is shorter here. And also, if we look at the streaking on the upper breast, we see that it is teardrop streaking, concentrated on the upper breast and less so as you get down lower. This is the typical plumage of a juvenile Cooper's hawk. Here we have a really nice looking hawk. We see that classic buteo shape. We see large dark patagial bars, a very large dark belly band. This is a red-tailed hawk. We see a dark trailing edge to the wings and a red tail, making this an adult red-tailed hawk. And not only is this a red-tailed hawk, but this is the northern subspecies, or Abieticola, which we see migrating in small to moderate numbers every season. But these are the ones that nest farther north and are much more heavily marked. Look how large and dark the patagial bars and belly band are. You have a nice black tip to the tail as well, and a dark throat on a darker head. And here's the top side of the same northern red-tailed hawk. Notice that the overall shade to the head and body is a little darker than our normal eastern red tails. And also notice that black subterminal band on the tail. Here's another adult sharp-shinned hawk coming in low, and again, notice that really squared off tip to the tail because all of the tail feathers are the same length. Here we have another adult broad-winged hawk. Notice on this one, you not only see that wide white band on the tail, but you can also see some of the other white bands on the tail that are often hidden and not seen from a distance. Looking at the wingtips of broadwings, they look a little bit more pointed than our other buteos because the wingtips are only made up of 4 feathers. And especially when they're in a glide posture, they get a really straight trailing edge to the wings. Here we have a small raptor that's dark overall with very pointed wings and a lot of streaking on the breast. This is a small, dark falcon with a big attitude. This is a merlin. Here's another hawk shaped like a flying cross. Again, long tail and long wings with rounded wingtips, although when they're in a glide like this, especially in the strong winds, sometimes the wings can look a bit pointed. Again, we see that the outer tail feathers are a bit shorter than the central tail feathers, giving the tip of the tail a rounded appearance, and we also see a large head and vertical streaking on the upper breast, not so much down lower. This is another juvenile Cooper's hawk. Here we have a hawk. We see those broad wings and medium-length tail of a buteo. We see the dark patagial bars and belly band that make this a red-tailed hawk. And also note the dark trailing edge to the wings and the red tail that make this an adult. And you thought I was kidding when I said the hawks were flying low today. Here we have a northern harrier only about a foot off the ground as it's cruising by our resident Canada goose flock. To identify harriers, we're looking for a long tail and long, lanky, pointed wings. We see that distinctive white rump patch, and we see an owl-like facial disc. And on the underside, we see there's not much streaking to the upper breast or the patagial areas, so this is a juvenile. Here we have another northern red-tailed hawk. Again, notice the big dark patagial bars and the big dark belly band, as well as the dark throat, just more heavily marked overall than our typical eastern red tails. And speaking of, here's a good example of an adult eastern red-tailed hawk, the borealis subspecies, just not quite as heavily marked as the northerns. There was a decent amount of bald eagle activity on the strong winds. Here we have an adult. Here we have a songbird that's light below, brown on top with some black and yellow to the head. This is a horned lark. We had a moderate number of turkey vultures migrating today with a little more than 100 for the day, so not quite the thousands that we had been seeing in the past week, but still a decent number to be pushing through on such strong winds. Here's another small falcon that's light underneath. This is an American kestrel. Here's a hawk with a long tail and long rounded wings. We should be thinking accipiter. Orange barring underneath indicates that it's an adult sharp-shinned hawk or Cooper's hawk. And we see a very squared off tip to the tail because all of the tail feathers are the same length and a relatively small head, making this a sharp-shinned hawk. I really enjoyed getting some close looks at red-tailed hawks today. They were down low because of the strong winds. Usually they're up higher and more difficult to see and photograph, but here's another adult that gave us a great look today. Here's another adult sharp-shinned hawk that was flapping as it powered through, and another field mark you can look for adult sharp-shinned hawks is that they have a hooded appearance. So the dark blue that starts on the top of the head runs all the way down the back of the neck and onto the back. A Cooper's hawk would have a pale nape, which is the back of the neck, so that dark color would be broken. And some sharp-shinned hawks, especially the smaller males, show not only a squared-off tail tip, but a bit of a notched one. Here's another accipiter. This one felt a little larger and lankier. We see a big head, and we see that teardrop streaking to the upper breast. This is a juvenile Cooper's hawk. Here's another hawk shaped like a flying cross. Again, note that large head and the rounded tail tip because the outer tail feathers are shorter, and it looks like this bird is even banded. And the orange coloration below indicates that this is an adult Cooper's hawk. Compare that to this bird. Again, we see orange barring underneath, so we know it's an adult. But on this bird, we see a small head and a very squared-off tail because all of the tail feathers are the same length, making this an adult sharp-shinned hawk. Here's another adult sharp-shinned hawk, and this one looks really small, especially with that notched tail. This is probably a male, which are smaller than the females. And again, notice that small head. Here we have a belted kingfisher migrating past. Notice that very thick bill, and also notice that it not only has the blue breastband, but also brown underneath, indicating that this is a female. Here we have a small light-colored falcon. This is another American kestrel, and from the spotting on the breast, we know that this is a male. Now, male kestrels do have a lot of orange tail feathers, but the outermost tail feathers are more banded, and when the tail is completely folded, we're only seeing those outer tail feathers. So all of the orange feathers that we would see if it spread the tail are hidden in this posture. Here we have a swallow with a very forked tail, and that alone tells us what this species is. But in addition to that, we see blue on top and on the head here, a red throat, and then a more pale underside. This is a barn swallow. Here's a hawk that's very lanky with long, somewhat pointed wings. The overall plumage is a combination of lights and darks. We see dark squares here in the carpal area. We also see a very thick black area down here on the belly. This is a rough-legged hawk. On the upper side of light morph rough-legged hawks, we see a white base to the tail that could be confused with the white rump patch of northern harriers, so be careful, especially since both species are kind of lanky looking. Here we have two immature bald eagles that were battling it out in midair, and oftentimes the upper one will come from behind, and as it swoops down, the bottom bird will flip upside down like this, and they may even lock talons. Here's the same two bald eagles continuing to come towards us. And once again, the bottom bird flipped upside down to fend off the attacker. And here's another look at that one that had the whiter head. This looks like an older immature, like a 4th-year bird. You can see it's got the overall plumage like an adult, but still some dark where it should be white, and some white where it should be dark. And just for fun, we'll end with a woodpecker. You can see some yellow shafts to the feathers, overall brown on the back with some black patterning, some red on the back of the head, and a black mustache make this a male northern flicker. And taking a look at the eBird checklist for the Hawkwatch, today we had 54 species. I picked up one new species for the season today, which was common tern, and we had a group of 5 of them, and later we had a group of 10 terns that were either common terns or Forster's terns, but were too distant to identify for sure. Taking a look at the hawk count report for our migrating raptor totals, today we had 104 turkey vultures, 1 osprey, 20 bald eagles, 18 northern harriers. For accipiters, we had 81 sharpies and 9 coops. For buteos, we had 2 red shoulders, 12 broadwings, 55 red tails, and 1 rough leg. And for falcons, we had 10 kestrels and 2 merlins, for a total of 315 migrating raptors. That brings the April total to 12,620 and the season total to 20,740. Taking a look at the forecast, for tomorrow it's looking cloudy and windy with occasional rain, especially in the morning, high up around 50 and strong west-northwest winds at 25 to 35 miles per hour, so looking less favorable than today. Today we did well because we had southwesterly winds, which are our best wind direction, and the sun popped out for a little bit. Tomorrow, if we don't have that sunshine and it's a less favorable wind direction, with the winds being that strong, I would only expect light migration. For Sunday, it's looking like rain with a high in the low 50s. Winds are shifting from south to north-northeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Wouldn't expect much activity. But Monday is looking better with partly cloudy skies, a high up around 60, and westerly winds at 10 to 15 miles per hour. So I would expect Monday to be a pretty good day. All right, well, today got off to a pretty rainy and gloomy start, and I was a little bit worried that we wouldn't end up getting much, but actually we had a really nice flight pickup, and as you can see, I got a lot of really close looks at birds, and I was happy to get so many good photos as well. Then the flight slowed down towards the end of the day, and it looks like tomorrow and Sunday will be a little bit slower before the sun pops back out for Monday and Tuesday. Hope to see you out soon at the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.